If God could speak, what would be his advice to us mere mortals? Well, in one of the greatest texts in the world, the Avadhuta Gita, Lord Dattatreya gives us the direct advice on how to understand the true nature of reality and what we too need to emulate when we are sincere in our search to become a knower of Brahman, the ultimate reality. And so let me explain this very important advice from Lord Dattatreya from one of the greatest verses in the Avadhuta Gita. Self-knowledge does not depend upon reasoning or the practice of meditation or the instruction of a guru or anything in space and time. I am by nature that absolute knowledge, the reality which is innate, eternal, and boundless as space. What a beautiful verse. Now, when we look at what Lord Dattatreya is stating here, when he says self-knowledge, that comes from the Sanskrit Atma Bodha. Now, Atma Bodha means the knowledge of Atman, which is Brahman. Atman here is the undifferentiated consciousness, which is identical with Brahman, the ultimate reality. And so he's stating here that self-knowledge doesn't depend on anything, right? Not even instruction from the guru, not reasoning, not a practice of meditation, nothing, because Atman itself abides. It is ever present and pervades all of reality and is always there. So yes, we can go to the guru, we can practice meditation, but these are to facilitate a knowing of that which is already there, right? And so this is why great sages like Ramana Maharshi said that the search needs to stop, right? You need to stop searching to know the truth. We often postpone our enlightenment because we think we need to jump over this obstacle, that obstacle, and even another obstacle to be worthy to be enlightened, right? And so we need to go through this arduous process. We feel like we need to suffer to earn what is already innately ours, right? We are innately Atman, which is Brahman. And so the Atman, it pervades anything within space and time, right? But that doesn't mean that the Atman isn't immanent within reality and at the same time transcends it. Of course it does. But it's not of that essence, right? It is essentially the ultimate. And so we often get confused about the objects of perception. And then we think we live in a dualistic world. We cultivate a dualistic mind. And then we forget about the ultimate truth that actually is the ultimate substratum of everything, and everything arises from it. Everything will go back to that. And so that's something we don't think about. But that is essentially what we need to think about, because self-knowledge is inherent. This is what Dattatreya is stating to us, right? We are beyond everything. Yes, it is obviously great to have a guru. It's great to have a meditation practice and this and that. But this should facilitate a deeper understanding that you're already that, right? It's something that we need to sort of unravel ourselves from this jiva, ego, persona system that we believe we are. But all this does is facilitate an ignorance of Brahman, right? We don't believe Brahman alone is real because we feel like we're this separate, isolated individual. And so how could everything be fundamentally one? From the jiva's perspective, that is complete gobbledygook, right? That doesn't make any sense. And so a meditation practice, having satsang with guru and so forth and so on, this can help disentangle the state of hypnosis of that the jiva has, and you'll get out of the dualistic mind. But then what you'll realize is that you already were always that, but you forgot you were that. And so you thought you were on this search for the spiritual realization when you were already that. That's the hardest thing for a lot of us to comprehend, right? That Atman already is Brahman in all of us. But we're on this path of ignorance and we don't have the knowing of Brahman, which is self-knowledge, right? Atma Bodha. And so the second part of this verse is basically Dattatreya stating the fact of what reality is. This is not a flex by Dattatreya. Dattatreya here is completely absorbed in the ultimate, right, in Brahman. And so this is more of a statement of the way things are. And so he says, I am by nature that absolute knowledge, the reality which is innate, eternal, and boundless as space. So infinite, eternal, there is no boundary, right? He is the absolute Brahman. And so it is fundamentally eternal, cannot be categorized, cannot be an object of perception, cannot have an identity. There's nothing that we can look at Dattatreya and say we can quantify his existence when he is in this state, right? We can't quantify it because it's outside the scope of our puny intellect and logic. And so we can only come up with words like he is absorbed in the absolute Brahman. He's beyond the finite reality and so forth and so on. He stepped into the eternal and this and that, right? This is only a linguistic framework for our puny understanding of the reality that he abides in. But he's just stating that what his nature is, right? So when he says here that he is the nature of the absolute knowledge, he's actually saying he is a knower of Brahman. He knows Brahman, right? Knowledge in a lot of the Advaita Vedanta texts is not book knowledge. It's actually the knowledge of Brahman. And when you read ignorance, ignorance actually means avidya, which means the ignorance of Brahman. And so for those who are not schooled in the text, they just read knowledge and they read ignorance and they kind of think, what is he talking about here? And look, that may be due to too much of a literal interpretation and translation of the text. There needs to be more context in English. There's no doubt about that. In some of the texts, there should be more context. But that's why we have some commentaries and this and that as well, right? But you don't want to read knowledge and think about book knowledge or things that you acquire from reality. It's basically the knowing of the ultimate reality, knowing of your true nature as one with that ultimate reality. And ignorance in turn is an ignorance of your own nature and the ultimate nature of reality. But Dattatreya states that because of this knowledge, he knows that the ultimate reality is beyond the finite, it is eternal, and it is like space, right? It is completely without form, even though the form dwells within the field of the formless, right? But it is absorbed in that. There is no separation from Dattatreya's state of consciousness. He knows that Brahman alone is real, even though the play of existence, the Leela, continues to unfold in front of his eyes, but he senses Brahman in everything. And this is why it's important for a spiritual aspirant to understand the true essence of the word namaste, right? A lot of people will say namaste as either a greeting or a way of saying goodbye, but they don't understand that what it actually is alluding to is I'm acknowledging the Atman within you, and I am that as well. It's a real sincere and honest greeting. When you say namaste to someone, you are saying I recognize the Atman in you, and I am also that, right? And so the practice for all spiritual aspirants is to embody that, and that's what Dattatreya embodied, right? He saw the Atman in all of existence, and that's why he doesn't perceive duality. And that's the big problem for most of us. We may say that, yeah, we're abiding in the Atman, we know all is Brahman, but then someone kicks you in the leg, or you stub your toe, or you get into an argument with a friend about politics or this and that, and you definitely don't know that all is Brahman, and you actually aren't seeing the Atman in everyone, right? And so this is very common in the modern day with so-called spiritual aspirants. But the spiritual path for us is to actually see the Atman in all. It's in the most grotesque person you can think of, and it's in the most pious person you can think of, right? And so it's within everything. Brahman doesn't discriminate between all of us. It's all as it is. It's like the phrase in the Tao Te Ching that the Tao loves and nourishes all but does not lord it over them. It's just unfolding. This is Leela. This is the play. It's all Brahman, but what we do as a jiva is we think that there should be this idealistic version of the reality and of the story, and then we soon find out that we are all straw dogs, so to speak, to use Taoist terminology, right? Straw dogs. So nature discards of its straw dogs without any emotion or attachment, right? And so we realize that that's kind of the nature of reality, the nature of the play itself. But we often have these idealistic visions that we are important, that reality should be a certain way. We should all be sitting around singing Kumbaya together. But that is not the truth. And if you want to deny that, then you can continue to deny that. But if you don't want to believe that that's the truth, then you'll continue to go on and live in this illusion, right? But those who have the eyes to see can see Brahman in everything, in the beautiful, in the ugly, in the sad, in the good, so forth and so on, right? Because all pairs of opposites have dissolved, and you yourself have gone through this dissolution process to where you understand that the pairs of opposites don't exist, and all that truly exists is Brahman alone. And you embody that because you are a real knower of Brahman, and you see in everyone and in everything that Atman alone exists. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.